2/3 town meeting and then 50% plus at the ballot in order to appropriate the additional couple $1 million. So, any comments?
Brian, do you know what the number is? Is it 2 million, 3 million?
2.2.
It's out, well, it's out to bid, so we'll actually build
No.
out a number to insert for town meeting, which will be the actual number. We'll actually have the fire station bid.
Do we have to revote the entire appropriation or just the supplemental?
Just a supplemental and a secondary ballot.
Okay.
For that supplemental.
But you expect 2 million-ish, plus, minus, we hope?
I hope minus, but that's
Okay.
probably based on all the discussions I've had, that's probably reasonable.
Okay. So, then we have a capital project for the airport. And if I am correct in understanding this, 95% of their ask is supported by grants, either from the state or the feds.
Right, so the increased appropriation will still follow and be covered by the same AIP state grant money, so our exposure is about $20,000, but we have to authorize the full amount all the way.
Great.
No. If anybody wants to make a motion to accept these along the way, please feel free. We
Well,
can.
for like Article 5, if you want to do the motion, actually, we have the motion drafted, bond council drafted before, so I don't remember the exact dollar amount that we have to go
On 3 or 5? I mean 5 or 4?
on 4.
5 has got,
No, that's the original appropriation. There's the supplemental, and I don't remember the number off the top of my head.
all right. Well, any questions generally about this? Is this going to be an issue for anybody? Okay.
Make a motion to adopt?
Well, why don't we wait, Cliff, why don't we wait till we see what the number is, just so that,
Okay.
but if we've got any issues, we can surface them. If there's something that somebody like Rafter or somebody had to show up for, we could ask them back. Article 6 is an infrastructure improvement project. Did this come through capital?
Quite frankly, it has not, and the reason that it is not is because we've been notified by National Grid that they're starting a project to go from somewhere down, I'm not exactly entirely sure where it's going, but it's bringing a cable out to Monomoy, and they're starting in either September or October. And if we don't actually undertake this small section here between Back Street and Mulberry Street, then we may lose the ability to actually upgrade or replace infrastructure in the street based on what this project is. This is going to be the first of many projects along the way to upgrade infrastructure at the same time.
Driven by grid?
They're, driven by National Grid and DPU.
What types of, I mean, I see the list here, but what types of improvements are we actually contemplating?
Water, sewer, stormwater.
And these were in our plan already, and now we have the opportunity because National
No,
Grid's...
we did not know about this project. To the best of my understanding of everything, this project came up and being pushed by National Grid and DPU, and so we kind of have to, we're trying to maintain our ability to update or fix the infrastructure in those areas without losing our ability to do it. And as you can imagine, I mean, some of the streets are very confined already, so if we don't do it at the same time, then we risk our ability to maintain our own infrastructure that's already in ours.
So it seems to me if this in fact is something Grid's going to be doing, they should get a list of these projects to us.
That probably would be a good idea. DPW, water company, and sewer all know the actual route that's going to be undertaken now. They know where it's starting and everything. I'm not fully versed or
I think, isn't
complete
there a,
understanding of what the route's going to look like, but I know that these streets are going to be in have limited ability to impact the project, I guess is the way to put it.
We can't say no.
We can't, as I understand it, we can't say no.
Yeah, I mean, I actually met with David Gray on the sewers being installed in my neighborhood, and he's just started sort of chatting about, I don't think this is the only one. It seems to me that there's some other project he mentioned that National Grid is planning on a big connection. Maybe this is it.
I think this is it.
But I don't think this is not if we're talking about the same project, this is not a small number, right? This is a big number.
It would be a very large number. Overall, for us to do the upgrades that are to, obviously, so we can be able to do our upgrades, it's going to be a very large number between the three entities. And as I understand it, we have limited ability to say no to them doing this project.
So again, National Grid's doing a project, and unless we make other improvements at the same time, their project can't go forward, or it will be more difficult because we'll have to, excavate again.
No, their project can go forward, but based on what they're doing in some of these roads are really small, and there's a limited area to be working on in the road, okay? And I think that there's encasements and concrete vaults that are going underground, so that's going to take up roadways. So what we want to do is we want to get our infrastructure replaced in these areas so that we don't have to dig up the road
Again.
immediately after or whatever, and B, to preserve our ability to fix the infrastructure in the road and not create an even bigger problem when we actually would be doing it because of this project. Is the way I understand the whole thing, but obviously as we can have David and Mark and Rob come back and discuss it more in depth about what the limitations are and why we're
Yeah, I'd like to get a better understanding
Yeah,
of
I
the
mean,
logistics,
Apparently it's a big, vault they want to run through the middle of the road, and the road already is full of sewer and septic and, not septic, sewer
Do they
and
have
wastewater.
de
and-
facto, I mean, what if we said, no, you're not going to do it? I mean, this strikes me as a project.
I don't know the
Yeah,
exact answer.
okay.
My understanding is that this is being driven by DPU as well, which has some limitations on what we can, what we have the ability to control, how we can control, as I understand it from David. But again, that's probably a better conversation from the people that have been far more involved in it than I have, other than me looking for the money.
So this is probably part of that hole where we collect money to bury all the utilities underneath the road.
I'm not sure if this project is part of that or not. But I will make sure that they're available.
So who's put this forward from the town?
For the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I understand, but
Ultimately, it's going to be a three-part article, or two-part article, I believe, to be for stormwater improvements and sewer improvements. I think in the small section here, the water company may, in one of their distribution system improvement articles, have enough money to fund what their portion is. But we
So,
don't in sewer or in DPW.
so somebody identified an economy and that they don't have to dig up the street again.
We don't want to dig up the street again, and we don't want the vault to overtake the space in the road so that we can replace our infrastructure.
and do you have any sense of how long this has been under discussion? I mean, did National Grid come up with this in the past 8 months, 9 months?
My sense is that it's shorter than that, but the exact time, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure.
Is there like an urgent need?
To replace this,
Yeah, like is it a disaster?
the infrastructure,
Well, this piece of the
Yeah,
cable
some of
going
it-
out to I mean, so this is like,
I think it's a 2 or 2.5 year project that they're going to be undertaking. So I think that we'll be coming back at the next town meeting for additional funding to do more of this work. Is it urgent? I think that it's urgent to make sure that we don't lose the ability to replace infrastructure on the roads and that services our residents from that perspective.
So is this going to require an override?
It'll require borrowings, and since some of it would be sewer, it would be through the user rate. And if we were going to borrow on the town side, we may propose a debt exclusion that we haven't for this. so I don't think these fees would be, might be free cash. Since free cash is going to be certified until.
So when you say a big number, free cash is usually not more than $5 million. It's not going to be.
We're not,
$50 million.
The article as presented before you only would ask for the authorization for funding to do Back Street and Mulberry Street. It would get us to a point where we would be able to then be able to plan the rest of it and move forward.
Yeah, but you're pregnant at that point. I mean,
I understand. Again, I was only asked about the last 2 or 3 weeks to try to sort out funding and where money may or may not be able to come from. So it's a discussion that's been going on a lot longer than the 2 weeks or 3 weeks I've been involved.
so what's the? I certainly have an opinion on this, but
My expectation is that the town's leverage is limited here. It's unfortunate that we couldn't have at least been notified a while back, so that we could have made this part of the capital program, if not, the plan. I mean, if this was going to be foisted upon us, at least we could have budgeted for it. I don't think that this came up in the last 60 days or 6 months. National Grid is it's
it's a big corporation. They've
Yeah.
got this planned out for some period of time.
Yeah.
So who in town government would normally be the person that would liaise with National Grid about, when National Grid wants to put cables here, there, and everywhere?
I'm not sure if they would talk directly with departments or what they would do, to be honest with you. I know they don't talk to me first, I can tell you.
No, so, I mean.
And clearly from last night, they didn't talk to somebody because they went ahead and 2 months ago put in
So
improvements
I'm
and
not
never
sure.
got a permit for them, so.
I don't know, to be honest with you, for what their protocol would be. But like I said, David, Rob, and Mark have been pretty intimately involved with this over the last probably 45 to 60 days, so at least that I know of. So they would be better served to be able to provide more answers to you. And I'll certainly ask them to provide it right up so that they can send it to you, but.
Because certainly my impression from chatting with David Gray was it was a big surprise to him.
Right.
This was sort of, National Grid says they've got this big plan to run this cable vault down Orange Street or wherever it's going.
Well,
And
it's going to be, I know that they're tearing the municipal parking lot up to do it too, so.
but it just it does seem pretty
So
bizarre.
why aren't they
that-
paying? Yeah, go ahead.
No, well, so why do we have to scramble to
Right.
fix everything? Why aren't they paying us to?
What is
All right.
that? Tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
Do you think? I don't think anybody in the room is the appropriate person to ask this question, but I wonder if the fact that if David Gray just got this position or very recently got the position as sewer director, and we were in transition with the head of DPW, if that's some of the reason that this wasn't brought to our
And the water
collective
company
attention
too, Steve.
before. Yeah,
My-
water company too.
My sense is no, but
Yeah.
I can't say with absolute certainty that that's not my sense. That
I mean, it takes like a year to move a single utility pole.
Get-
This wasn't planned. I mean, this wasn't planned on the back of a napkin recently.
And given David Gray's attention, as I've witnessed and talked with people about sewer issues around here, he's on top of stuff.
Sure. No,
I
I
know. This
don't
would
think
be-
this was a memo that sat on each department
Yeah.
head's desk for months and went unnoticed.
All right, so is town administration I'm more than happy to send off an email to Libby and say, round up the suspects and have a
Well,
conversation.
making a list, we can,
And it seems like National Grid, I'm disappointed. We've had a lot of conversation, as we're going to talk about in a minute, around Article 7. and getting those projects through the capital planning process, because we have a process. And now Article 6 comes along, and
Right.
it sounds like we're committing ourselves to a fairly large expenditure of money, which potentially is going to crowd out some of the other things that we might want to do as a town. And we're just happy to let it, follow its own path of least resistance.
I don't think anybody would say that they're happy about it, but, there's special legislation for utility providers. They don't have to play by the same rules as everybody else, and I think that's what we're going to find, is if they say this is critical to be able to deliver power to certain parts of the island, then they're going to be able to do it.
And my question then would be, when did you start planning? When did you know what you were doing, and how come it hasn't come before us?
Yeah,
So
no,
that
I agree.
the
I
town
think
can
those
have a
are the
discussion
questions,
about
yeah.
how we're going to get the money to.
It's transparency. Part.
Right, there's a lot of other issues where, the town works well with National Grid. It's unfortunate that they didn't let us know. And I really think it's about notification, not about permission in this instance. If they were going to do it, they were going to do it, but we could have planned better for this if they'd let us know.
All right, let's look when our next meetings are, and we'll see if we can get somebody to have a discussion with us on it. Move on. Article 7, District Improvement Financing. We can sort of have two kinds of discussions about this. We can talk, make sure everybody is reasonably conversant about what district improvement financing is trying to accomplish, and then we can talk about where I think we've ended up. So, and I guess the first question is, does everybody have a pretty good idea of what district improvement financing is, how it works?
It just looks like another way of having an impact fee where you can't charge impact fees.
But it's not an impact fee, only because it's not over and
It was
above.
diff.
Well, no, only because it's not over and above the taxes that will be raised as the improvements are made. So it's not a,
It's not extra money.
it's not a betterment. It's not extra money. It's,
Just allocating the monies for the
Yeah.
particular.
It's kind of like opposite the impact fee, because it takes away the ability to move some of that funds from the impacts it has outside of the geographical district, like the impact, that we talked about on schools or on, the wastewater treatment facility, or on anything that doesn't exist right outside of where this construction's happening, doesn't get the benefit of those extra tax dollars. And that's exactly opposite of what we were talking about with impact fees, where we could say, okay, this is putting more strain on the whole system, so we need more money to shore up all the systems. So it would, do great for the planned infrastructure improvements on Old South Road, but it also removes any approval process from the voters. They're not going to be able to get to say, okay, we need an operating override to put that rotary in. Well, now we get to have our 2 cents heard on that. It'll fast track some of those things, but again, to the detriment of the school or some other areas that might need that money.
I mean, they still should be able to, the project should still have to support what infrastructure impacts as far as sewers and the rest of that stuff. And that's the planning board's job. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right. I think it just gets back to the fact that there's no, at least we haven't found or implemented as a town, a mechanism to charge those impact fees to developers. You get gifts for things like bike paths or sewers, one-time gifts, and I think the planning board does everything it can to exact the amount of money that it sees fit, but frankly, the analysis hasn't been done by this group or this body or any other to figure out what those long-term downstream effects are and try to get that money out of developers. So,
Right.
This is not the same thing, I guess is what I'm saying.
There's a point where we expect Nat will come in and make his case for this, or?
Well, you don't have a short conversation with him? No? So I had a lengthy conversation with him the other day about this. He is off island, otherwise he'd be here. So, for his, I don't want to say he doesn't have as good a handle on how these things get financed. So, these are not projects that get financed with revenue bonds. They get financed by GO, general obligation bonds, full faith and credit of the town. If it were a revenue bond, then the revenue raised would be dedicated to paying the debt service, but they're not. We heard last night, and I think in your packet you got the memo from Cinder, but we heard last night, she was here, the selectmen's meeting, that this is a very small, in fact, 70 to 100 million is more the realm. I think between transaction costs and just the headache of trying to maintain and the overhead of trying to maintain records, just it doesn't make it feasible. Plus, the improvements are all happening, and this legislation is generally aimed at areas that aren't developed, and they want to spur development. So towns come in and make upfront big investments in infrastructure and then pay for it out of.
That's what I'm saying. The purpose of it being here is not the purpose for which these are generally used, right? The purpose for these generally used are in communities that are in
Right.
real tough shape
Right.
and want to spur development, and that's not the case.
No. The reason I believe it is here is a belief, which I think is erroneous, that the town has not voted for improvements on Old South Road. And I say the reason it's erroneous is that we have looked backwards, and we have not found any of these projects that have come through capital. And at least in my 5 years here, we've not had any of these projects show up to be voted on. So,
Improvements as far as what? As far as,
well, basically, roundabouts are
yeah,
the,
we've got a whole book full of them right here.
yeah.
Yeah, and those, I think those are going to get a lot of support at town meeting. I think they'll get a lot of support here. I personally think they're needed, and some of them are overdue. I mean, we knew that we needed to upgrade the Milestone Rotary a long time ago. I think the planning board knew that probably at least as early as 2004 because they put forward a plan that looks good and is now part of this new wave of improvements. They put that forward in 2006. So, everybody's known about it for a long time. I think there was a time, around 2008, 2011, where these projects wouldn't have had a lot of support, but they didn't come back. And now I think they can come back. They can get funded through the normal course of business. We don't need the diff, and it'll still happen. People recognize that there's need for some traffic engineering on Old South Road even before these new houses go in. So,
So, my sense is there's a lot of frustration about the pace of those improvements, and probably tied to some of the history you just spoke about, and that this is sort of a reaction to that, but maybe not the right medicine for the problem, because maybe the problem isn't that it wouldn't be a funding thing, but the problem is somewhere else in sort of the chain of events that leads up to these improvements being
Maybe.
made. I think, so I have a question about, maybe the questions are, would this actually make things happen faster in some, because I think there's a real train wreck coming if these improvements don't get made.
Right.
And I can understand the level of frustration from people saying, we need these improvements before, not after
Right.
they're necessary. And so my question is, despite what I said about this being not normally how these are used, if there is some truth to the matter that this would make things move faster, that'd be interesting to know.
Yeah. There would be.
Well, so jumping ahead, I think where the selectmen got to, and Brian, weigh in here so we both have our facts aligned. Where the selectmen got to last night, and as a result of some other conversations, is that there is support from them to advance a number of these improvements through the capital process this fall for decisions in the April town meeting and not tackle them at a special town meeting. You know, first of all, what you've got is pretty conceptual. We may or may not have numbers. I mean, if we do, it's going to be pretty close to the
I
end.
think that they will have very high-level planning numbers,
Yeah.
so, to go through the capital process.
In my conversations with the chair of the Board of Selectmen, I've urged that they use the capital planning process, that we don't go around that process. It's there for a reason, so let's use it. And I think that's where the selectmen ended up last night. And and in my conversations with Nat, I believe if he feels that, in fact, the selectmen and the finance committee are behind the improvements and recognize they need to be made and endorse them in one fashion or another, then he doesn't believe that. I mean, he said if the selectmen don't support the diff and the finance committee doesn't support the diff, it's not going to pass.
Right.
So, anyway, so,
It will not move these back. Just authorizing a diff
yeah.
and the required improvement plan for the diff area is not going to make these projects happen
Any faster.
Because any borrowing that would be required to finance the projects before any of the revenue is being captured still requires a town meeting authorization. Authorizing the diff does not allow me to just borrow money outside of town meeting's authorization to borrow that money. So the process is still the same.
So what's the attraction of the deal?
Well,
If you get a better deal, that's what I
Yeah,
was
is there
gonna say.
something,
Is there-
what's,
is it a-
what's the advantage or the benefit of,
it actually costs, it's not,
It's not a better deal.
there's risk to the town, okay, from this perspective. What a diff does is, once you approve it, it sets a baseline assessed value in the area. And all of the increased assessed, and all of the change in valuation within that area, okay, gives you a new growth factor, and that revenue is generally what's used to pay and support the general obligation bonds that are being issued. Now, the risk is that
It doesn't get that high.
well, there's a couple. A, if it doesn't get that high, then you're having to fund that gap through your normal operating levy limit, okay? And B, if you have a market downturn and your assessed values go in the opposite direction, then that is not going to then subsequently bring in the revenues needed to cover the debt, which then means the general fund has to fund it through regular Proposition 2.5. The only,
But that's not really it. I mean,
that is a very big risk.
well, you're just paying for it one way or the other. If not
If
using
you
the
have
diff.
dedicated, but with a diff, okay, you're taking dedicated new growth revenues and changed in values and plugging that against the debt. So in a sense, it's not, as long as you have enough to cover it, the general fund is not your 2.5 operating levy capacity is not touching it. But if you have a decrease or you don't bring in the projected valuations, then the general fund has to cover.
Right, but if you don't do the diff and you do the improvements, you have to pay for them.
But you could
Do an
finance it,
override
with-
anyway.
you could do a debt exclusion, which would be outside the levy. So
Yeah.
that's why, but the other thing, what a diff does let you do is it lets you create a different amortization schedule than it technically is currently allowed under municipal law, okay? You can create an ascending amortization schedule so that your highest debt service payments are when in fact you believe you'll be having the maximum change in the growth in the area, okay? Other than that, there's no advantage to it for us, because we don't have a problem accessing capital markets, the development is current, and it's a lot of work to actually go through it. Now, one of the other things that people need to understand too is once town meeting has to approve the development plan, and once that development plan is approved, it gets recorded with the town clerk's office. So if using that premise, if we get into the project and say we want to go in a different direction and we have a diff, we have to bring it back to town meeting to get it approved and refile. We can't just tack in a different direction with infrastructure improvements. Whereas if we have an authorization for a borrowing for infrastructure improvements, we have a little bit easier flexibility to make changes if everybody was in agreement. So First Southwest, Cinder has been involved in all of the really large-scale diffs. There's 3 of them currently in process. There's one in Worcester for about $75 million, Assembly Row in Somerville, which is about $100 million, and Quincy, which is about $150 million. She's said all along that she said it last night, nobody's presented an argument in the town of why this has to be done this way, when we have the capacity to do it at other ways. So
who brought it up?
Well, Nat, I mean, this is a creature of the planning board.
We've been in discussion with the planning board for the better part of about almost probably 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, I mean, it
Well, longer-
it almost ended up on the annual town meeting warrant.
Yeah, I was going to say longer than that, because I had people from Richmond talk to me about it 18 months ago. So it's been floating around, and
Well, last night, the selectmen did, correct me if I'm wrong, but the selectmen did essentially come to a consensus that they supported the infrastructure improvements that transportation and the planning board were going to be putting through the capital process.
Do we have any ballpark? You mentioned a high level a planning level. I think you said
I've heard
estimate of the cost.
numbers ranging between $10 and $11 million, but I don't know if that's.
And how about what's the projected revenue from this new growth?
Truth be told, I don't have a way to tell
Right.
you because I don't know, I haven't seen.
But
it.
without knowing that, how could you say this is the right way to fund?
it.
Yeah. I mean,
you can't.
right. I mean, if somebody could come up with a pretty,
Typically what
pretty
happens
good
is-
estimation of what that new value is going to be, and subtract what the value is today, and figure that out. But that is the only way I think you could.
Right.
I mean, you'd still have all the negatives that you mentioned, but
But at the end of the day, it doesn't get you anything. You're still going to float a bond, general obligation bond.
I mean, and for,
You're still going to capture the incremental increase in values. And that's going to be used to amortize your, and if in fact they're, if you do $10 million of improvements and you have $500,000 worth of, let's assume that covers the debt service in any given year, you're going to capture that anyway. So in theory, it's pretty neutral to the taxpayer because it's coming from new growth.
I think in this case everybody wants the same thing, which is for the
They want the improvements
to
done.
happen. I mean, everybody wants that to happen. So let's just get on with the work of figuring out how much they're going to cost and how we're going to pay for it. But this doesn't help us pay for it.
Maybe everybody in this room wants it to happen. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably some of the concern.
Well, living on the west side of Main Street or the west side of the island, if they don't happen out there, that's...
People there don't go to the airport. They don't want to buy medical marijuana or recreational marijuana. Lots of good reasons to do this.
go to the UPS store.
Sure. Island Varieties.
It'll be
going out
delivery.
there. They got everything you need.
I'm convinced.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think the selectmen have a way forward, and I would suggest we think about taking no action on this. I don't think we want to, there's no reason to, and think about it. I mean, that's one way to deal with it. I don't want us to take a vote here, but and I think it's a further conversation probably with the proponent to make sure that he's comfortable.
Can I just ask a question about what Cliff said earlier about the impact fees? There's not a way for us to get any kind of contribution.
I think in Massachusetts, you can't have impact fees.
Well, can we call it something else?
Well, you can
Would you-
actually.
would you
I
like
mean,
me to,
I'm going through
expound
this
on
right
this
now.
one?
You can be asked to do things like contribute to bicycle path improvements, or to improve the sewer pump. That it's going to service you, but also helps out other areas. So there's certain definable things that you can do, but you can't say we estimate the impact over the next 30 years to be $8 million, and we want you to pay that out over the next 10 years. You
But
can't do
we
that.
can say we'd like a gift, and that gift is X
And it happens
all the time.
all the time.
So
We just have a difference of opinion about how to deal with that.
okay,
And not support from the planning board.
And
Planning
not-
board's doesn't support this.
Doesn't support
kind of approach.
asking for a gift from the developer.
Yeah.
Well,
Even though the
it's not
planning-
exactly right. They do ask for gifts. I think what we've been talking about for a year and a half is asking for larger gifts.
Yes.
Yeah, and calculating what the value of that gift should be differently by looking at a wider range of costs. But, you know, like I said, they do take something. So they're not opposed to it philosophically.
That is correct.
Trying to bridge the gap here
I
so
know
we
you-
don't
I know you
continue
are.
to widen the divide.
But so how can we impact that thinking?
I think that this body did a good job a couple of years ago at setting the framework for a process where a developer would have to assess the impacts of what their development would do. What we got back was late, and I think maybe the numbers didn't quite make sense, but at least there's some precedent now to ask somebody to study the impact on various town departments and services of their new development. So that's one way to do it. I think we could go back and refine that process and ask that it be done in a different order, because by the time we got the report back, they had everything. This developer, Richmond Company, had everything they wanted from the town. You know, they got the zoning change, so at that point, the numbers could have said just about anything.
So we had no more leverage.
Yeah, our leverage was when they were asking for the zoning change.
Right.
So they got it for,
Got it.
and it turned, they did, the planning board, Richmond did an analysis as requested.
Yes.
And the planning board then hired somebody to also do an analysis. And which study has never really surfaced, but it's been done. And the numbers that the planning board's consultant came up with were considerably higher than Richmond's.
But to your
it's a
point, Joanne,
dead
the time
issue.
to look at it would be now, before the next very large project comes down the pike. I mean, there's a lot of land on Old South Road that's, you know, pine trees and scrub brush that is developable land. And, you know, there will be a generational shift there, and that'll all, you know, come to the table. And if Land Bank doesn't step up or somebody like that, that'll all be a giant subdivision also. And there's other areas of the island also. So, you know, it's easier to talk about these things in the abstract than when you have, you know, planners and attorneys and developers at the table with you. So.
However, if they come backed by a 40B threat in their pocket, there's very little leverage anyway.
Hopefully we're going to get some protection. You know, year by year we're going to have protection, and then maybe we'll meet that 10%. But you're right.
I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of leverage to be had in any of those conversations that I saw.
No.
So it doesn't seem like a difficult.
I will say that
But-
a number of the communities for where contributions have been made are 40B type development. So, you know, I think it's all how you approach it and how you have the conversation, and the willingness to have the conversation. These larger developers, I mean, I believe, fully understand how that game works.
Yeah, I just meant in terms of, you know, leverage as it relates to
Yeah.
the zoning, et cetera. I mean, I'm not saying they don't see value and they aren't willing to make an investment, but in terms of negotiating leverage.
Okay.
So that's diff. Anything else?
Okay.
What's next? Does somebody have? I gotta get my
Bike path.
Yeah, the Tom Nevers bike path. I read in town council's notes that this is non-binding, advisory, sense of the meeting sort of thing, just to see if the town will make it a priority, but it doesn't bind them to do anything.
I think the history of this is Tom Nevers was like number 2 for a bike path, and then the planning board or whoever
Made
came up with a
Hummock
priority system of what bike paths should be where, and which ones we should do first, and Tom Nevers went to like 15. So we got yelled at 1 year, 2 years in a row. And I've just determined that bike paths have been put on this schedule, and there's only so much money, and they did kind of get, you know,
Yeah. I can see the argument for wanting it if you live there. People drive pretty fast on the road, but
yeah, so I think this is
I don't know what the others are. I can't, they don't come to my mind, but they may be.
How does the voter know that this is just advisory in nature? Is that town council gets up at the meeting and explains that, or it doesn't read that way, right?
Randy could have seen the town council's report by now, and he could have availed himself of the opportunity to hear from town council before he submitted it. And that's usually the process, is you go get advice from town council on how to write these things.
No, I understand in terms of the citizen.
How
does the voter know?
Yeah, how does any citizen know? I don't know.
So when they go to vote at town meeting, will that be, because it doesn't read that way in what I'm reading.
You're right, I don't know. Maybe in the voter's guide, maybe.
Or maybe someone raises their hand and tells them that.
Yep.
But if they don't, the voter might think they're voting for or against a binding.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will send a email to Rhoda Weinman on all of the conveyance articles, because I think that she's still the head of the real estate.
To the best of my knowledge.
Yeah. Asking that they review those. I'm not sure. I would have assumed that town administration would have asked for that, but given what happened last spring, I don't think that's probably happened. So all of our typical process, I think everybody knows what that process has been. They weigh in on conveyances.
Does anybody have any info, background on 71 Washington
That's
Street?
the same question.
I mean,
You saw
that's a
the
pretty
meetings or
interesting one.
Yeah.
I don't.
Is that, I'm guessing it's for trucks, right? We took 50 Union a few years back to make it easier for trucks to make that turn. This is the NISDA cottages.
Right.
Yeah.
So it would be easier maybe for a truck to turn right if
Mhm.
you got rid of those cottages?
What the intent.
Yeah.
I do know in a conversation with the administrator of the land bank that the land bank has been approached to actually do this and have been reluctant to because they don't want to get involved in doing infrastructure purchases.
We don't usually swap, isn't that what we did in the other corner? We bought it, then we swapped them.
Could have.
Is that one of the ones we didn't finish the swap?
That never happens.
So these are the little cottages on the corner.
Yeah.
I
The
can't-
trucks can't make the turns.
Right now. But I can't imagine that'll be popular to get rid of those.
You know, NISDA's been hard up for cash for years, so maybe they get, some fair payday here and can create a campus and have vibrant programs somewhere else, and it's all
At their
in
farm place. Right, they have the farm.
I think they sold that.
Oh, they do?
I think so. It was on the market a few years ago. I think it's been sold.
The one on,
One when it
Yeah.
run.
Yeah.
Especially if you saw the shape, you saw that one this winter that jacked up. It's not much to sell.
okay.
It's like the salt marsh center, I understand, is in a similar state.
Mm.
That's rough.
I was a little bit surprised to see, and I thought I was keeping pretty good track with the selectmen, but I was surprised to see so many selectmen articles on here for a special town meeting as opposed to waiting and just doing it all in the spring when the room's full. Particularly given some of the conversation leading up to the decision to have the special town meeting, where there was so much angst in the room, except that the timing was being forced by the marijuana
Another thing, right.
issue. And so,
Well, I'm with you in thinking about this. There's part of me that would like to say in these that to send the message that this stuff shouldn't show up at a special town meeting.
unless it has a time, I get, you get 100 signatures, a citizen can put anything they want on it.
You're right.
But other than that, I would think you got to show real timeliness need. But
What is the objection? It sounds like you guys share it to taking care of important business at a special town meeting? I mean, aside from the word special, what's the deal?
Not
It's
enough
like the
people.
majority of the people aren't gonna show up for a special town meeting, we're kind of.
Well, we just have 2 town meetings, and you don't have to call it annual, you don't have to call it special, and you can just show up twice a year.
Biannual.
We're a pretty big business. We could probably handle that.
Well, I mean, if we institutionalized it, then, yeah,
But honestly, what is the difference? Like, I mean, we're saying to the voters, there's business that needs to be taken care of. You don't like when you're asked to come multiple nights in the spring. You don't like when it takes up your whole weekend. Now we're splitting it into 2. There's lots of business that, can't wait 10 months.
So that isn't what we're saying to the voters.
Well, I mean, isn't that what you say when you say we're meeting twice a year now?
Well, that's not what we're saying
I
in
mean,
this
that's.
case.
But
I mean,
that.
if we were to shift to saying that, that might be one thing, but
Yeah,
we're
that's
still,
why I say if it was
but we're
institutionalized.
still saying we have an annual town meeting, and if forced, we have a special town meeting, but we hate special town meetings, and I mean,
But that's-
that's the dialogue.
I guess. I mean, I don't know that there's an official person who says we hate to have special town meetings. I think they say we don't always schedule a special town meeting, but when we do, there's important business there, and it's incumbent upon you to attend.
Well, there were official selectmen saying we hate having
Yeah,
special town meetings. Maybe they weren't saying it in official capacity, but
Right.
they were saying it on the record
Yeah, I mean, it's personal opinions, and I get that there's, the chairman of this committee, and there's, members of the board who, don't think that it's worthwhile or don't think it's appropriate or, any variation of those things. But there is business that needs to be attended to, so, I mean, why put off certain types?
is anybody on our finance committee who's on the government study group?
We should probably try to get a spot.
We've had special town meeting, 2 years in a row at least, right?
I mean, to me, that's a town, I wouldn't be opposed to it if it was institutionalized.
Neither would I. I mean, it's a $100 million business. Most
Yeah.
corporations have like quarterly board meetings, right, where they do all their work.
So, I just,
Then one meeting could be just zoning.
used to be a moratorium on zoning.
Nobody.
You'd never get the quorum to take any votes.
Okay, the record will note your position, Stephen.
Okay.
And then we have sewer commissioner decisions on extending the sewer district map. The selectmen are the sewer commissioners, and it's historically we have waited for them to weigh in on these. I have been asked a couple of times if we're going to weigh in before the selectmen. I remind them that they are the sewer commissioners and that we would wait for them. So that's Article. That's Article 15. But does anybody understand what's going on in Article 14?
Industrial land.
I know that there's 2 sets of, no, there's not 2 sets. This is land out off Bunker Road that the town would like to lease for periods longer than 5 years. 5 years is currently the limit that the Board of Selectmen can lease land for.
Has to be voted after that. Short-term leases they can do. Long-term leases has to be voted.
Right, so this would give them the option to enter into, say, a 20 or 30-year lease so that somebody can get financing to make some improvements to the property. This is in the CI district, so it's like manufacturing. Also, that's where you could have a recreational marijuana dispensary. That would see your inclination.
So why is Linda Williams sponsoring it and not the?
She brought this to my office to get
Signature.
signatures, and I had the chance to ask her about it, and she said that her phone's ringing off the hook from landscapers who want to rent the space, and so this was her civic duty to bring it forward. That's all I know.
It doesn't work unless they're more than 5-year long leases?
I guess, if there is, and I don't know how large these parcels are, but if you are, putting a lot of money into something like in the form of, construction of some sort, and you want to finance it, you're never going to get financing on shorter probably than 30 or 40 years. And I don't know that that's how long they intend to change, this limit to, but that would give people the option.
So I'm not sure why we can't, I mean, I don't know, maybe it gives you more flexibility, but I've never seen town meetings say, no, we don't want to rent land and make money for 20 years or 30 years.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an intention to set a limit to the number of years. I know, a few years back, I remember Rick Atherton objected to some leases that were going to be for 99 years. But, I don't know where between 5 and 99 people think is acceptable or what they want to do here.
All right. Any thoughts?
On the lease thing? And we didn't do so well with, what are the apartments that we didn't like the windows for? That's a long lease.
Tell you,
I'm not repairing any dirt. I'll tell you that right now. Going on record.
And strangely enough, Hulking won the contract for Six Fairgrounds, too.
Yes, I saw that. But, I mean, we...
In full disclosure, I was on that selection committee. They actually had some, just so you all know that.
I'm sure they were the most competitive. No, I
And
just
you
thought it
told
was-
them they
I
had
thought
to
it was an
replace the
interesting
windows
curiosity.
before they could have the... yeah, I don't know.
So all the sewer articles, I think we wait until we hear from our friends over at the board.
I'm sorry, can I just ask another
Yeah.
question on the last one? Just who within the town handles the leases? Who's the town?
So there's the procurement officer who, I think that's one of the hats that Brian wears right now. And then, so there's a competitive bid process, and then the Board of Selectmen
No,
awards.
when we're leasing out land.
Yeah.
Okay, so the landscapers that are going to Linda and asking this, that's not her official role, though?
No, it's
No.
probably,
And
yeah,
totally valid. I
the
understand,
fact
but-
that she's like, has in the past, for hire, been a land use consultant.
So I'm just
Yeah.
curious who it would be in the town, just maybe we could understand a little more about sort of what demand they see.
Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's an RFP process, or there's some packet that's put out that says, make your best proposal by X date.
Yeah, we'd have to
Yeah.
do, depending on the size of the parcels, we have to put it out to bid, to competitive bid, and that would be handled by me or somebody on my staff. And then we would make a recommendation to the board through the town manager on who it would be.
But are these parcels that are being leased currently, and people just want longer terms, or this is new, fresh dirt that has never been leased?
I believe they would probably be parcels that we haven't leased out yet, because I haven't, the only leases that I know that we've been involved with have been a lot of airport land, nothing else that I'm aware of. So this may be to give the town the flexibility to lease these parcels that we may not be able to lease now because of the term that will create for I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
I thought we did something similar to this with leases a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we need authorization to go longer than 5 years from time. So,
Okay, so she's doing, so we have to do it for every single parcel, it's just not a policy to do that?
no,
Oh.
we'd have to do it, we'd have to authorize it for whatever parcel we want to.
But I guess what I'm asking, maybe at a later
No.
time, is the intent of this article to 5 years, or is the intent of this article to free up these particular parcels, or is it just trying to get both done at the same time?
So, you mean to go above the 5 years?
Well, yes,
Yeah.
but is this article doing that, or is this article sort of making these lots available at all, or is this article both of those things?
I understand that that the Board of Selectmen have the right to make them available for lease now,
Okay.
but they haven't put out the packet because they want to lease for longer than 5 years at a time.
Okay, thanks.
The next set of articles through Article 25 are zoning. I don't have a date when the planning board's going to have their public hearing.
I don't know if
Typically, we would wait until their public hearing and take action. Article 26 is removing the DPW head from NPEDC. Brian, do you have any background on this?
I think, and I think they would like to remove the DPW director because I believe that the NP and EDC sets the, negotiates the salary for the planning director. And I think the prevailing sentiment might be it's a little odd for one department head to be on a committee negotiating for and with another department.
Has there never been any consideration that the Public Works Director would just recuse himself for that part of the discussion? I mean, it seems like,
Discussions have been, so.
Plus, hasn't it been that way for a year? Why is it all of a sudden a problem? I mean, there's a new head of DPW, but didn't Kara have these issues?
I believe that that's what has been said, but I could have misunderstood it. I wasn't very confident.
well, so would somebody on the Board of Selectmen understand what the rationale is, or do I have to call Barry Rector?
I'm not sure.
Sounds like a call might be a good
Might be
idea.
a call to Barry.
Okay? Any comments, gentlemen, ladies? On 26? What?
Seems complicated.
Seems like there's another story here.
Just hear what the proponents have to say about it. I don't know.
Article 27, speed limits.
Did we just pass or accept the authority to make our own speed limits last year?
There's a
I
bunch of
thought
new-
so.
Yeah, there are a bunch of new 25 MPH signs all over the place.
I thought the state did it and they gave us the authority to vote that we could do it, so that would,
But I think maybe the issue is that 25 is the minimum.
And they want it to be slower.
Yeah, we want this special act to be able to do permanent 20-mile-per-hour zones in certain areas. So not just like 20 miles when school's in session or something like that. But
I just thought they were giving us the authority to set the speed limits, period, but maybe I'm wrong.
well, I think that's the case. But I think that you can't set a speed limit that's lower than 25.
Yeah, this actually, I believe, allows, the exception to the statute allows you to designate safety zones, and then they come with a speed limit of 20 miles an hour within that zone that's designated. That's the way I understand it.
Okay.
Where does that come from? Is it the police chief or who sort of?
I
that
saw
forward to
on my
somebody
Rotary
somewhere?
bulletin that Chief Pittman was coming to talk about this, so I think it's his initiative.
Baby. All right.
But I didn't go, so I didn't hear it, so I don't know for sure.
Do you want more information on this one? No.
No,
Okay.
Seems like it
I
needs-
have enough information on this one.
All right. Let me apologize. I was hoping that we would have a more, there's been a good discussion, so I don't, but we would have moved this process along a little further. I was looking to see when, we've got a couple of dates coming up here. Does anybody have those or can retrieve them faster than I'm going to be able to?
The dates for,
Our next meetings.
Let's see. I have FinCom public hearing on September 21. I don't know if there's a meeting before that.
The 24th, is that right? I know the public hearing is on the 21st.
Right.
Of September?
Yeah.
I have something for the 26th.
Yes, that's correct. The following Tuesday.
Yeah. I just have FinCom meeting on the 26th. I don't know what the subject is.
All right. So we're not due to get together for another month?
No, and I'll double check to make sure I can put my hands in the calendar. I think on the after the public hearing, there'll be motions, we'll finalize motions on the 21st, and then they have to be done by the 26th.
So at the public hearing, hopefully we'll have answers to these things, questions we have. Can we just come prepared to make motions and make decisions on everything that we feel comfortable after the public hearing?
Great.
So that'll be the 26th, meeting on Tuesday, the 26th.
No, I think the 21st is our,
The 21st is the public.
It's the public hearing.
right, and after the public hearing,
Oh, just keep going. Okay.
let's keep going, because I don't, if this public hearing goes the way all the others are, we'll sit here stone-faced. Nobody will say anything. I'll recite the number. We'll be done.
I hear you. Come prepared.
So, you agreeable to that?
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to railroad people into fast decisions, but I think we probably,
I do not feel railroaded.
good. Anyway. Anything else?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I do have a question, just sort of an operational question about FinCom, which is, do we ever go back and do sort of forensics on how things have played out from previous things? And what I guess I'm getting at is the sewer bid for the sewer that came in at 50% of what the proposed or the estimated need was. And then, I don't know, Ian, you may have seen, I haven't caught all the selectmen's meetings, maybe there's been subsequent discussion. I know there was an article in the paper, I don't know, what, 2 months ago, said, you know, the sewer bids came in at 50%, and my reaction was probably like everybody else's. My first reaction was, awesome, right, it's 50%. And then my second reaction was like, but everyone voted on something that, you know, and then we had a subsequent vote on Nantucket that maybe used the same logic that was voted down.
Well, it did use the same logic.
It did use the same logic, except,
I can tell you what the logic was. The CWMP estimates were from 2012 and 2013, and when we were asked by the capital program, I think either capital program committee or the sewer advisory group that was working on some of this, we took what construction inflation, an average of construction inflation from 13, 14, 15, and 16, we averaged that, and then carried those projects all the way to the year, based on that inflationary figure, carried them all the way to the years that we thought they were going to start. So that's how it was done.
but, and so why, maybe I'm supposed to know from that, why did it come out so different? Did the inflation end up being less, or what?
It was 4% a year for 4 years.
Yeah, but it was, Brian, also must have been certain cost per mile or something, some sort of thing, right? I mean,
Well, what we did was we took the original cost from 2013 and added 4% every year until we thought we were going to borrow money and start construction.
And those weren't construction contract
Those were
prices from
just very
2013
high-level
anyway.
planning,
So
planning costs.
it could have
That's
been we
why
were
it-
off by, 18% then, and then
Yeah.
we,
I mean, if they were off
made it
by,
grow,
if they
the rate
started
wasn't
already
appropriate.
off significantly, then unfortunately, all that happened is we made them off even more, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not questioning what you did, but
Yeah.
you know, wherever the sort of difference was, and I was just wondering, and it's actually even more of a process question about whether we go back and look at that sort of stuff and learn from it, so that going forward those same mistakes. I mean, that's pretty startling to me that And I think Matt had said, it was quoted in the paper saying, yes, the same logic was used in Mattocket. It doesn't mean it would be that off if it happened, but it still feels to me like the town meeting voters had really bad information, and the ballot voters had really bad information. And I just wonder if
I mean,
the process is
yeah.
flawless.
My take on it is that, everybody was skittish about underpricing these things, given what's happened for buildings. We've past few years been quite a bit under. Had to come back 1 and 2 times for additional money, and I think that there was a concerted effort, and I do remember a lot of discussion that we feel very comfortable with these numbers. We have enough cushion built into them, so. And I think they wanted to avoid having to come back.
I also think, if you look at it, there was a wide, it came in, at 50%, but if you look at the 2 bids, there was a wide disparity in the 2 bids, okay, and on it anyway. If the bids had been around 18 million, it wouldn't have been a 50, both of them had been there, it wouldn't have been 50%. The fact remains that the construction bid is $12 million, $12.5 million, the low bid. The next bidder was 18 point something million. So I do understand that, but, the methodology that we employed to get to where we got to was actually been known for the last 18 months of when these presentations have been done about what we were doing. Like I said, the costs had originally come from about 2013, and they were slightly inflated on how much per linear foot, okay, and how much per pump station. And at the time that we adjusted them without having an engineer actually having designed the project to give and be able to do it, we added an inflationary factor that was based on the best industry knowledge at the time. I certainly would have rather been closer to the lower end of that, but I also would not have wanted to have to go back like we've had to numerous times and ask for more money because we had underestimated, I guess. What would have happened in Matt? I don't know if Mattocket would come in significantly lower or not. We could sit and say we think it might, but I have no idea. I have no way to know what somebody would.
Just the fact that I think there were many more bidders here too. Right? This isn't the problem we have with the fire station where the only entity that bids is Scanlon.
There was only 2 bidders.
Really?
They didn't even bid.
And
We've heard that there was 4 bidders that actually had gone to the on-site meeting, but only 2 contractors had done that.
I just think it's worth, it feels to me, if we were 50% under, obviously it would be a huge outcry for good reason, and we'd all be sort of hysterically going back and trying to figure out what happened. When it comes down to people voting on a sort of an emotional and very large financial issue, being 50% under, I kind of think deserves a little of the same attention.
I heard from a social friend who owns a construction company off island, so it's not Toscana, who was good friends with a low bidder, our competitor with a low bidder, and he said that he was disappointed that he had left so much money on the table. So, that's a $6 million difference is big.
So we got lucky, we think.
I've also heard from
Yeah.
David Gray. He thinks that Robert Hour is going to make money on this project.
Yeah.
You don't bid a price you're not going to make money at. But I am shocked that they're so far away from what they knew the appropriation was. I don't know why you would do that. If you know what somebody's budget is to, whatever, buy a cup of coffee, build a house. You don't come in 50% under that. Unless you think that the other guy's going to do the same thing, and there's no history of that happening.
It's bizarre.
Where's this guy getting his pipes? I don't know. How's he able to do that?
Well, look, I just...
Yeah, it's a good
If
question.
the number for Mattocket had been half as much, might it have passed? If the appropriation for Mattocket had been half as much,
Right.
would we be suing Mattocket?
Right.
Are these people obviously all required to be bonded for these projects?
Yes, I think probably the answer is yes. And I
Yeah.
agree with you that
They're required to put payment and performance bonds.
Bonds in place. Yeah.
I think it is, Chris, worth all the same scrutiny when we get the answer we want as when we get the answer we don't. But for me, it's like there's, the process is the process. We have to use some number to make these estimates. And then these bidders can come out of nowhere with any number they want. We don't have much say about it. We can't hold our number secret and say, this is, we've appropriated some amount of money, and then they come in with a competitive bid. It's a terrible position to be in. Trying to start the planning process without any real numbers, get an appropriation, and then put it out. It's crazy.
But I haven't heard anything about revisiting that again.
No.
I mean, in light of this, should we be visiting?
I don't think, and now I'm speaking as a Nantucket resident,
Yeah.
I don't think Nantucket's going to get revisited until we have seen some more water quality data. Because it continues to improve. And,
But it also might cost half as much to do it.
right, but if you don't need to do it, would you do it?
I suppose the curves cross somewhere, yeah.
Precisely. But anyway. And the water quality, the one thing that Rob McNeil has done is he's gone back and he's dragged all the data out of, and it's now posted, so people can at least see what the water quality data looks like, so people are on the same.
Yeah, it was an emotional issue, right? There was a lot of money at stake, and the information that people voted on was wrong about 100%. I don't know what's more.
We don't know that Nantucket was wrong.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm saying.
We don't have any way to know that it's wrong because we never got to the point to put it out to bid. We could have put 80 million people voted for it and it came in at 110 million, and then what? Everybody would be saying, well, I missed by 15 or 20% in the opposite direction. I don't know that Nantucket was wrong. I suspect we may have been a little bit high, but we don't know that until we put it out to bid.
So just like anything else we do, you make these assumptions based on the guidelines that the state of Mass or the federal government
We
makes
made
you.
the guidelines,
makes you-
the
right.
assumption that we made with pricing was based on the best information we got from Word and Curran on what they were seeing for construction increases on an annual basis since 2013.
Well, that's just the inflationary piece, though. That doesn't go to what the base was.
But the base price was based on what they were seeing for construction prices when they were building the CWMP. And clearly, if you start with a bad number in 2013, you got a
Just
worse
compounding
number in
your problem.
2017.
Why didn't we start with a number for what they saw for construction elsewhere in like 2016, 2015?
I also think that we're in an environment where contractors still want to be working, and there's the opportunity for good jobs to come along, which I think this was a good job that they both wanted. And we got two good contractors who, one of them clearly sharpened their pencil, and I think that, as Winston and Sampson had said, I think that some of the sharpening of the pencil was due to a result of, I think they missed out on a bid that they really wanted by X number of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I think that they were determined to win the bid. Now, maybe obviously they left money on the table because they probably weren't happy about it, but, I think that there's value in looking at it, but because these things were developed so long ago, what value we have today in trying to go back 6 years and figure out how bad that was, is going to be difficult.
Well, I guess if it did, it would go to Stephen's question, right? If it showed a sort of a flaw in.
Yeah, maybe the issue is we try to get updated data so we don't have to make those. We don't have to carry that assumption out quite as far.
I don't know what goes more germane to our role, right, than to try to make sure the town meeting voters have the best possible information that's been fully vetted, right, when they're making the vote. And so when we miss by 100%, it feels to me like it deserves to be looked at.
Right. And then again, to your point about, we look really hard when the numbers are the other direction. I mean, we looked at the fire station every way that we could, and now I think we've exhausted every option for every new way to bid it, every new way to build it, every, new, how much square footage can we cut out of it. We did everything to that one. So if sewering Nantucket is determined to be a priority, and it sounds like it's maybe not the case right now, but if and when it returns, I think there's lessons to be learned from this.
I mean, I think that we could, the value could be from the fact that we can now take these two bids and come up with what a linear foot is costing us right now to recalculate those. But the problem that I would have still today is, I don't know when Nantucket will ever be brought up again, so I have no idea how far to take it. And I don't know if the number will be any better or worse by the time we get there, if I have to compound it by 5.
But as an exercise, what if you took the numbers, your linear feet, and just plugged to Nantucket to see what that number?
Of what it is.
Do you?
Yeah.
Are
I
you
have
willing
what
to
the
share it?
linear feet is.
What?
I have what the linear feet is.
Yeah, so we can break it down.
How many pump stations. And we could certainly we could calculate it out and look at it. And see how.
That'd be of interest too.
Look, I don't want to make anybody do a bunch of work that's not going to be helpful and instructive going forward. It just
No, I mean, it actually is probably a good exercise. It's not.
it was just something that really, as I've thought a lot about the kind of the role of what we do
Right,
and
right.
how we make sure we bring the best information there. That really struck me, and it also struck me how kind of unnoticed it seemed to be. After having just had a very emotional big vote on the topic,
Yeah.
I was like, no one cares about this.
The spotlight shines for like
the people that were in
12
the
weeks
room were
before
involved,
town meeting,
if I
and that's
believe
it.
me.
Okay.
We were, when I was sitting there for the bid opening, the first bid the first bid they opened was actually the $12 million bid. So.
So you're pretty happy.
No, I
It
get
was
that.
instantaneously in my mind that this was significantly better than we anticipated.
I get the better part. It's the legislative process piece of it, sort of maybe failing a little bit is more what I'm focused on.
Dysfunctional.
Well,
I'm not sure I agree with that, Chris. I mean, I think you can only go in with the information that you have and the best information you have. The methodology that Brian and the finance department and the sewer department was based on, that's all legislation is based on the best information available at the time. I'm not to say that I guess
I don't think the
on the
process was wrong or how he calculated the numbers, or not. I'm not saying you personally, but how the numbers were calculated. I think the information was so old as to not be useful anymore. I mean, what would, you wouldn't look at anything else that's 5 years old and say that's going to be the price plus 4% a year. There's far too many variables to do that.
Well, don't forget that when we started looking at it, it wasn't 5 years old, it was 5 years old, 4 years old.
Right, but maybe there needs to be some
14, it was
mechanism
still
for
fairly
updating
young.
those every 12 months. There has to be some industry or regional standard. I mean, that's why we have these consultants. I mean,
I don't think you'd be saying that if it was 50% over. And I think in a political process where there's a lot of things at stake here.
No, I think it would. We've gone through we've gone through the fire station. We've gone through what the other can't come off the top of my head. We have been under appropriating
Yeah.
for the last 2 or 3 major projects, and I think we have a bit of a black eye. The Board of Selectmen has a bit of a black eye. The town has a bit of a black eye. We keep undershooting, and there are all sorts of reasons why. But and I think each time everybody tries to pump the numbers up a little bit, and we fall short. And it's, we all think about it some more, and obviously Brian and people doing the work think about it some more, but you still have to go with what you got. I mean, I don't believe in beating ourselves up, or I don't beat myself up about it. I mean,
I don't think I'm talking about beating ourselves up.
well, no, but I'm just saying in terms of saying so you have to do what you do every time. You have to go back and look at your assumptions and the models you have to
That's what I'm
come up with a
suggesting.
cost. And, yeah.
I'm suggesting that we do those forensics both in cases where we are low as well as when we're high, because the political effect, I think, can be just as damaging. Right? We don't have sewer. We're not building sewers in Nantucket, possibly because we had bad data, not because it's not the will of voters or we don't have the money or whatever.
Well, I think that in that regard, it would be useful if you were to run Nantucket through with the bid numbers for Shumo, just to satisfy whether, was it a $70 million project
I do think that.
or was it a $45 million project? Because I think if it were very significantly different, you're absolutely right. There may have been a very different.
That's fair.
And I mean, the thing that would inform us, I think, is depends on, well, we may have our opportunity. Looks like National Grid's going to force us to do a lot of infrastructure improvement, but I mean,
I'll
it
go
may
in
very.
the opposite direction, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for.
Yeah, no. We did not appoint, as I recall, because you weren't here, aside from electing you to.
Thank you very
Position.
much, by the way, everybody. That was happy
Um,
news. I didn't realize I'd even missed the meeting. So when I bumped into David on the street the other day, and he said, "You must know that you're vice chair again." So I didn't know, but thank you all.
Put you in charge of the food also. Party favors.
Party favorite, right? So we didn't vote. You had been filling the role on the social services, human services.
Yeah,
And I
I'm
think we
glad you
did-
brought that up. I may have some time commitment issues for those meetings. I'm not unwilling to do the job, but if there's anybody interested in taking that on, I'm happy to talk to you about it and what goes into that. The finance committee's representative on that committee does a lot of work, does a lot of the heavy lifting, and is called upon to dig through the financial statements of some of these organizations, most of which are very easy to understand. A few are not. So anyway, if somebody's interested but isn't sure they want to commit, we can talk and maybe have a vote at a further meeting. But
Well, we're missing 3 members, and one. I mean, if you're time crunched and there's nobody who's stepping up, Denise might be an interesting person to do it. I mean, she's got the financial chops, and I think she's probably got some time.
okay.
But
Yeah, and
let's,
again, if
she's
nobody's
in
willing
Europe,
to do it, I do enjoy it, so I would go back. But if somebody else has more time to offer, that would probably be a good thing for that committee.
Is there anybody here that's interested?
I think it rubs the hospitals too involved here.
Oh,
It's
come on.
not good for them. But being part of it, they're recusing myself from all the meetings. I don't think it's effective.
All right. Well, let's wait till we get together and see. We'll put it on our agenda for next time. Hopefully, everybody will be here for the public meeting, and we can decide then. Otherwise, just to reiterate, Peter is on capital committee and is going to stay on capital committee. And I know you guys have started that process, right?
The department has a returning stuff.
Yes.
Late this week, we'll be meeting about the meeting process. to get ready.
And I think there was a audit committee, but I guess by statute I'm on that as chair. And then there's another committee it's like the ad hoc budget committee.
Yes,
Is that,
they meet about 3 times a
You mean you missed all 3 last year?
I don't think they were.
I think I was supposed to go also, so I missed them too. Are they
They're ad
posted?
hoc, so you don't know when they are occurring.
They are close.
Spur of the moment.
They meet, we typically have meeting met in the beginning of the budget cycle, and then I think we met right before the presentation or right after the presentation of the selectmen. It's members of the school committee, board of selectmen, and finance committee.
All right. Let us know.
Absolutely.
And the only other, 2 quick questions for you. One, just to reaffirm, you're not anticipating an operating override this year? Are you, Brian?
I don't anticipate one, but I reserve my right to change my recommendation should it become necessary, but I don't.
How many rotaries do you want to build?
Oh, we're going to do that with just an override. It's operating. We don't want to, I mean, the issue is our operating cost exceeding what we're going to raise.
I don't believe that we will need one based on preliminary projections. I don't think so.
Yeah.
We may have debt exclusion,
Yeah.
those are different.
We- Right. And so what, 30 seconds, leading indicators, anything that's gone from green to yellow or red?
I don't think we're in red, and I think that some of the yellows just, that we look at locally, just maybe timing issues of when things kind of lined up in between last quarter and fourth quarter this year, but I don't think that we have any major concerns right now. Everybody is on vacation, and we've talked about it.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Great. Thank you all very much.